Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Way podcast, where we learn in English, poco a poco, or podcast by podcast. If you are in the Northern Hemisphere, today is an interesting podcast for you because we're going to be looking at all things autumn. We're going to be talking about a very magical moment in the year, the equinox, specifically the autumn equinox. And for me and for you, it is a perfect time to slow down, notice the changing season, and think about how we want to spend the next few months. We're going to talk about what an equinox actually is, a little bit of its history, and why we have daylight savings time, and then we'll make a cozy seasonal bucket list, and I'll tell you what that is, and I'll invite you to reflect and be present with the changes happening around you, and some journal prompts for you to practice your English writing at the end.
Bienvenido al podcast de The Way. Si quieres aprender inglés y hablar con confianza, estás en el sitio correcto. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a mejorar su inglés y alcanzar sus objetivos. Visita nuestra web theway.es para conocer más sobre nuestros cursos online desde A2 hasta C1 y descubre cómo podemos ayudarte a avanzar en tu aprendizaje. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen Language Pair cómodamente desde casa.
Okay, let's get into it. Firstly, I want to acknowledge that the equinox of the northern and southern hemisphere is on the same day, but in reverse. So if we are celebrating the autumn equinox in the northern hemisphere, the southern hemisphere is celebrating the spring and vice versa, right? So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can celebrate an equinox wherever you are. And let's get into what an equinox actually is. The word equinox comes from the Latin phrase equal night, right? It's a moment in the year when the day and the night are almost exactly the same length. So if you look at the solstice, which we have a summer and winter solstice, it's the opposite. It's not equal. It's when the day is longer and the nights are shorter, or again, vice versa. But the equinox is when it's the same, and then it changes into the other seasons. So that's quite pretty and whimsical, if you want to think about it like that. It's about 12 hours each on the day of the equinox, and it only happens twice a year, so in about March and in about September. So again, depending on where you are, it might be the spring or autumn equinox. For us in the northern hemisphere, we are celebrating the autumn equinox. Now, this is interesting because this is something that people have celebrated for hundreds of years. You know, it is a time to celebrate change. The great thing about celebrating an equinox is that it helps you to stay present. It helps you to realize that things are changing, and it helps you to just be a little bit more aware of your surroundings. And this goes true for the people in our history. You know, Stonehenge in England, Chichen Itza in Mexico, they were all built I'm going to say allegedly because I don't want to say anything that's not technically correct, but allegedly these types of buildings were built to be in position of the sun, right? So that on this exact day, it was in the perfect position to be in alignment with these buildings. And it was a way to honor the harvest, the seasons, and the cycle of life. And I just think that that's a beautiful thing to add into this 21st century, especially in 2025, where we have so much drama and political problems going on in, you know, this day and age. It's nice to just take a step back, you know, have a pause, you know, in your life and just be present to where you are. Right, but don't you think that it's something that is also quite lovely to connect with our ancestors? You know, something that people have been doing for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years in the past, and maybe that's a tradition that you can connect with now in your life at the moment. So now, talking about the equinox, in some parts of the world, we have daylight savings. Now, this is a very interesting concept for me. You know, coming from South Africa, we don't have daylight savings. It doesn't exist. Your days are longer and your days are shorter. There's no change in the timing. But when I first arrived to the northern hemisphere in Europe, I realized that it's a thing, right? So after the equinox, the days are slowly getting shorter and the nights are slowly getting longer. And many countries, not all, like I said in South Africa, no, but some countries like to implement daylight savings. Now, this is when we change our clocks, right? Usually in late October, so that technically there's more light in the day, so that you can sort of aprovechar, you can make the most of your daylight hours. This idea started in World War I in order to save energy, and many countries still do it today. Although I have heard how some countries are trying to maybe get rid of daylight savings. But again, research your country and see what's happening with your daylight savings if you have it. I know that Spain was thinking of getting rid of it. I don't know if anybody will. It's been ingrained in society for so long that maybe they won't. But I personally don't have an opinion about it. I understand why people would do it, but I think it's something more human to appreciate the normal clock, as in the normal daylight. I live in Spain though, so the daylight changes are not, drastic. Whereas when I lived in Poland, you wake up and 8 o'clock it's still dark, and then it's dark again at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Their daylight hours are a lot shorter. So I don't know enough, to be totally honest with you, in order to talk about the ins and outs. That's a nice expression, meaning the details. So I don't know enough about the topic to give you the ins and outs of it. But I can understand why some people would want it. Personally, I would rather just appreciate the normal day-to-day of the hours that you have. But each to their own. That's another nice expression, each to their own, meaning everyone, does their own thing. But let's continue. So some people love it because it gives us more daylight early in the day, but others don't like it because it makes us feel tired and out of rhythm. And I must say that that's how I feel. I need a couple of days, even though it's 1 hour. It's so silly. It's only 1 hour difference, but my body does feel the change. And that's something I wanted to ask you. If you have daylight savings in your country, can you feel it in your body? Do you need to take a moment and adjust to the change, or is it something that happens naturally for you? Right, let's continue though. So we've spoken about the technical parts of autumn and the equinox and stuff like that, but I wanted to share something with you that is personally one of my favorite things to do throughout the year, and that is to create a bucket list. Now, Let's start with what a bucket list is. So it comes from the English idiom, to kick the bucket, right? To kick the bucket is an expression that we use that means to pass away, to die. RIP, right? R-I-P. So when people make a bucket list, it's all the activities that they want to do before they die. And people have like lifelong bucket lists, like all the things. Like when I was in my 20s, I made a bucket list of like 100 things that I would love to achieve. And it was something like, write a book, to, build a snowman. Coming from South Africa, there's not many opportunities to build a snowman. So, a bucket list could be big things. It could be small things. It doesn't really matter. It's just personal little and big achievements that you could tick off to say that you have accomplished something in your life. However, now that I've gotten a little bit older, I must say that I love and I really, really enjoy making seasonal bucket lists, right? So when there's a change in season, I create a space in my journal where I write down seasonal activities of what would be a way for me to be present and in the moment this season. So if we had to look at autumn bucket list, it could be something like, go for a walk and notice the difference in the leaves changing, or try to find 5 different colored leaves on your walk. It could be finding out what are the seasonal fruit and vegetable that is available in your country and make a meal. It could be watching some cozy films, and also obviously watching cozy films in English could be an easy way to implement English into your routine without a lot of effort, right? So these are the lovely things that people enjoy doing. Start making coffee instead of making smoothies. Maybe start baking instead of having ice cream. So like you can see that there's a natural change in the season. I usually go from drinking iced coffees or drinking smoothies, and I move towards tea. English speaking people, we love to drink tea. So it's just these little different things. But I encourage you to do something different for yourself. Maybe try a new recipe for soup. I'm going to try a typical soup from Poland that I want to try and make. So it's just, I feel like I'm talking to you guys as if I'm trying to sell you something. But I really do encourage you to make a bucket list. It's really a fantastic way to just, aprovechar your life. To really just like take the bull by the horns and just like, be in the moment and not just spend time on your TikTok or on social media or whatever. Like really just appreciate this change in the season. So I've made a bucket list for myself. Let me share with you what I'm going to put on my bucket list. Okay, so here are my personal bucket list items for autumn, specifically this autumn, because I like to change them every year. So, cycle along the river. Now, you guys must remember, I live in a very hot city in Spain. And in the summer, it's literally, I go to the beach and I go to the pool, and that's basically it because it's just too hot and humid to do much else. So now that the weather is cooler, I'd like to go for a nice long cycle along the river. I want to do some walks in the mountains. I want to try 3 new soup recipes, right? So I usually do the same soups because they're easy to make, but I want to be adventurous and try something different. Make a new hot drink. So like I said, I drink coffee or I drink tea, but I want to try and make a new drink, maybe with like turmeric and cinnamon. Cinnamon is canela, and maybe try something that would be good for boost meaning like subir, boosting my immune system. Right? I want to read a spooky book or a classic horror book for Halloween. I also want to make a new recipe or a new meal with pumpkin. Now, I usually just roast like asado, like make some sort of roast with pumpkins. But, I've been influenced by a lot of the American, I guess, media. I want to make like a pumpkin pie or a pumpkin latte, something that I can make that feels very autumnal. All right. I'd also like to go for a picnic. Now, there's one beautiful place in Murcia that is quite famous for picnics, and I'd love to go there and just sit on a blanket, read a book, and enjoy being outside in nature. And then one thing that usually happens in autumn, throughout the year, is that I have seasonal hobbies. So a hobby that I only do in one part of the year. For example, knitting. Knitting is tejer. Now, it's too hot to knit in spring or in summer, so it's usually a hobby that I start again in autumn and winter. So start knitting again. And finally, write some snail mail. Now, snail is caracol and mail is correos. When we say snail mail, it means to write a letter and send it in the post, right? So the old original way of communicating with people, not only by WhatsApp or not only by email. It's, I think, a very nice way to slow down and connect with people in a much more whimsical, I guess, and cozy. Cozy is acogedor, in a more like magical way. Right, so those are mine. If we have to get into the next part of the segment, it's being present and noticing changes. Now, it is a beautiful way to celebrate the equinox. It's simply to notice what is around you. Have you noticed a change in weather? This week, I went from wearing shorts to wearing jeans, right? Have you noticed the bugs, the bichos? I can hear, because it's not so hot, I can hear the insects outside my window more. Have you noticed any changes in colors of the leaves? These little things. I've also noticed that the sun and the sunlight doesn't feel so intense. because maybe you have or haven't noticed, but sunlight changes in intensity according to the season. So these are just little ways to take a moment and pause, appreciating the small details. And what is really beautiful is that you can do this as an English activity in your journal, in your writing. You could say, I noticed that the air is cooler. The leaves are turning yellow. These are just little ways you can implement English into your everyday life. And talking about implementing English into your everyday life, I'd like to finish with looking at some reflection and journal prompts, right? Again, perfect for practicing your writing, or you can just answer these questions in your head, right? Question number 1. I think these are beautiful. Actually, I'm going to put them in my own journal. I wrote them down and I just thought, it was a fun activity for the podcast, but actually I'm going to do it myself as well. Right. Question number 1. What is one thing you would like to let go of this autumn? Let go, meaning dejar. So what is one thing you would like to let go this autumn? Like a tree letting go its leaves. Number 2, what is one new habit or intention you would like to plant, like a seed? Again, this is very imaginative, but it could be quite beautiful. So, what is one new habit or intention you would like to plant, like a seed? A seed, semilla. Finally, describe your perfect autumn day. What are you doing? What are you wearing? What's the weather like? For me, a perfect autumn day has to have rain. I love the sound of the rain. Maybe on the couch, on the sofa, watching a spooky film for Halloween. Maybe you are outside going for a walk in nature. Right, guys, and that's it for today. I hope that you've enjoyed this podcast. It's a little bit different than what I usually do, but it's sometimes nice to do different things, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know in the social media on our Instagram, Facebook. We're also on TikTok. Let us know if you made any comments on the being present or on the bucket list or even on the journal prompts. Otherwise, everyone, I'll see you soon. Bye.
Si disfrutaste de este episodio y quieres llevar tu inglés al siguiente nivel, te invitamos a descubrir nuestros cursos online en theway.es, diseñados para mejorar tu fluidez y confianza en situaciones reales. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a transformar su aprendizaje. Visita ahora theway.es y realiza nuestro test de nivel interactivo de manera gratuita. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen de Mid-Third cómodamente desde casa.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.